I don't remember like why or, but I just remember having the thought, if I were taller, I would live life as a guy. And I just felt like I would never pass because of my height. No one would ever perceive me as a guy. And even when I cut my hair, I cut it with the idea that it would eventually grow back out. I'd keep it long. And I wonder if at that point it had something to do with like gender identity and identifying as trans and feeling like, well, if I cut my hair and keep it short, am I that much closer to being trans? And also I didn't feel like male pronouns fit that perfectly, but it was hard to know if it was because actually they weren't right for me or I had been using different pronouns for the past 25 years, so anything different would feel weird. I had a lot of internalized homophobia. It took me probably 3 years from the time that I, first realized I'm definitely not straight to the time that I was able to actually say, yeah, I'm gay. I literally would Google, like, how do you know if you're gay? And I'd say the joke is, like, that's how you know you're gay. Like, you know you're gay because you're Googling how do you know you're gay. Like, straight people don't Google how do you know if you're gay. And I remember not being able to tell if I was attracted to women. And it was a crazy feeling to not know yourself. Like, it was a crazy feeling for me to think, and I hated it. And it made me feel so stupid that I didn't know if I was attracted to girls or not. I'm not a huge fan of Orange County. I often say you couldn't pay me to live there again. I don't think I realized until later how, like, oppressively conservative and uniform it is. I had, 2,200 kids in my high school, and I can't name you one person that was out as LGBTQ while I was there. Not one. I didn't see anyone around me who seemed normal, who seemed like me and was gay. And so when I started thinking I might be gay, it didn't feel like I could be gay and still be normal and still be me. There were several years in there where I would tell a friend, I have something to tell you. And 2 hours later, I would still have not been able to say it. I would still be so scared. I would write. I would actually write, I like girls. I couldn't write I'm gay, but I would write I like girls because I couldn't say it. And my friends were all far more okay with me before I was okay with me.
What did it mean if it was true?
I think it meant, like, in my head, it meant that I was wrong, that something was wrong with me, that I was, weird, strange. My parents' house is finally being, like, renovated and remodeled. But prior to a year ago, there were still bunk beds in my sister's room. There was still crayon wallpaper and circus wallpaper. I just hated being in that room because it just reminded me of being so insecure as a kid and the way I used to feel. And I was a very depressed kid from, like, ages 10 to 15. I was joking to my dad and said, I think I have ADD. And he says, your mom and I have thought that for some time. And I was like, what? It's a joke? Like, what? Like, you're just telling me this now? I started taking antidepressants, not because it was acknowledged that I was depressed, but because I was on, like, ADD medicine. For me, depression was never that I felt, like, sad. It was always that I felt nothing was my depression. Like, it was just gray, like, just nothing. And it was always that I felt like no one could understand what I was going through or what I was feeling. My dad has always been the most open-minded and accepting person. I think that's because he worries less. My mom worries a lot. She used to say, if you have a choice, choose guys. And I would say, obviously. Like, obviously at that time, like, obviously if I have a fucking choice, I'm going to choose, I'm not going to choose to be gay. And, you know, now at this point, like, if I had a choice, I don't know that I would choose to be straight now that, you know, I've experienced everything, because it's made me. And I think it's important, and I think it's enabled me to have empathy for situations I wouldn't otherwise. I was talking to my dad about, you know, how annoying it was that my mom kept saying that. And he said, Marnie, you just have to tell her that you're gay. And so I'm like, all right, I'll tell her. And then later on that day, my mom comes up to me and says, I talked to Dad. He explained everything. I love you. Like, that's okay. You know, I just want you to know, like, I love you and support you no matter what. And after that, she never said it again. I definitely went to college and had no idea what I wanted to study. I said I would go to the college I got into that was the furthest away. And so I went to Emory University in Atlanta, Georgia. I read a book called A Problem from Hell. And it's about genocide. What stuck out to me was the Rwandan genocide. I had never heard of it. I didn't learn about it in school. I had no idea that it had even occurred. And that was very upsetting for me. I got really interested in Africa and then took some classes on Africa at Emory and got into the idea that I wanted to help end poverty. To be the person I wanted to be, I had to do the Peace Corps. And in retrospect, I also think that I wanted to prove to myself that I could live alone. And they assigned me to Gambia. And this is what I'll say is the hardest part about the Peace Corps. It's not like living without water or electricity. It's that everything around you is foreign. The food, the clothing, the people, the language, the culture, you know, the vegetation, the houses, like every single thing is unfamiliar. We had roommates then, and she said, like, no, it's fine. Like, it's okay to be scared. Like, you're going to be okay. And just kind of like every day after that, I started feeling a little better when I woke up. And then I got to a point, I was sitting under this mango tree listening to Thievery Corporation. And I remember thinking to myself, like, this is incredible. I am so lucky. I'm getting paid to like get to experience this new culture, to learn a new language, to learn. Volunteers in Guatemala, Peace Corps volunteers in Guatemala had done like a safe zone training. And I saw their material and said, I'm gonna adapt this for Gambia. I wanted to adapt it for Gambia because Gambia is a Muslim country where being gay is punishable by death. I knew about a lot of other LGBTQ volunteers in the country too. We made it happen, and the staff loved it, and they said it was, you know, wonderful, and they do that training every year. That was around the time I started thinking in Peace Corps, like, you know, if I were taller, I think I'd live my life as a guy. But I'm not taller, so I can't do that. So that's done. That discussion's over, and I'm going to put that away. I was working at the LA Gay and Lesbian Center at the time and had a supervisor who was a trans guy and was fairly short. Mm-hmm. And that was the first time I thought, like, oh, he does this. Okay, like maybe this like isn't out of the realm of possible for me. There was this process where every volunteer meeting that we have, we'd start with like, what's your name and pronoun? I feel like pronouns are either an affirmation or a negation of an identity, right? Like if you use the correct pronoun, you are affirming that person. You're showing respect. You're saying, I respect your identity. I respect who you are. I tried using male pronouns. I did that for a bit. And it was the most painful thing to be misgendered. It's I don't know. It's hard to explain, but it just feels so terrible. And I think that's why, you know, pronouns are so important in the trans community. But eventually then I tried gender neutral pronouns, and I felt like that felt much better. But a part of me always worries that maybe it just feels better because it's less painful to be misgendered. You know, like maybe, you know, am I on the path of eventually getting to a point where I'm, transitioned to being a man. Like I don't know. I learned a lot. I did a lot of trainings at the LA Gay and Lesbian Center, and that helped. And so when I got to business school, I was in my second, which is the last year, and met a trans woman who was going to be joining the next class. We created a Trans 101 session. Knowing that session and the Peace Corps session still happen every year, like nothing could make me happier. When I started at Google, I knew I wanted to do something similar, and then luckily was able to randomly talk to Kevin Perry about it. With that, we created Trans at Google. My wife once asked me, when are you the happiest at work? And by far, I'm the happiest when I'm doing trainings or when I'm, reading feedback from it or talking to people after it. And hopefully next year I can move into people dev and make trainings and creating trainings and scaling it more of my life. My name is Marnie Florin, and I use gender-neutral pronouns such as ze or they, or my name.